On the screen at the moment, you can see the board that we set up with, and I was lucky enough to choose which side in an incredible roll. I think I'm still undefeated, Paddy, is that right?
Yeah, including two
Going
roll-offs, which
first.
is great.
It did work out. I think I did roll 7 4 pluses in a row to start the game, apart from the one to get the fireball. I figured out as well. I
Yeah,
forgot to tell you
yeah,
about that,
just
but
the only one you wanted. Yeah.
the only one I wanted. That's right. So really, the only thing to really say is I just chose the right-hand side. There are arguments in the written article a bit more, but there's a low linear object, a swamp, and I was worried about the forest being too close to me on the other side. And then the next shot is how we deployed. And I think you'll probably have some things to say, I suppose, Paddy, throughout about what you thought about that. But mostly it was the same as what I planned to do. What did you think?
Look, as you said, this is the first time I played Wood Elves. I'm a bit unsure how to play them. I learned a lot, literally in turn one, about how I should deploy them, and this probably isn't how you meant to do it. I didn't really know. So how you have deployed there is kind of how in terms of space that you've taken up, is how I expected it to go. Squashed, tight, and probably forfeit a flank. But on the flank that it looks like you're forfeiting a lot of space on, you've got two giant dudes, the Carnosaur and the Ancient Stag with the Skink Priest on it, who are formidable in holding down a flank. So look, my intention always, basically the two eagles and the Glade Guard and the Dryads are in between the two eagles. That's what I was going to do every time, and I was planning initially, and probably wrongly, to deploy the Deepwood Scouts as they are there in the woods, as like an offensive piece, because I only really had them and the dragon and maybe the tree man as stuff that could kill things. But regretfully, I deployed everything too far forward. Obviously, the benefit of Wood Elves, which I know and I knew before going into this game, is their range, and their strategy is to fire and flee, basically run around, pepper dudes, and avoid combat. I put everything way too close, which gave you a huge advantage first turn, allowed you to get a lot of spells off, which had devastating results.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that pretty quickly. Generally, it's hard to sort of talk about deployment order here. That's a bit more in the written side of things too. That it's an area I think is untapped. A lot of the game is about matchups. In this instance, I didn't get what I wanted straight away, but I was able to move a few things around. I was hoping to put the Troglodyte on one side, but after the deployment of your spellcaster late, I sort of had to make a decision early, and I wasn't unhappy with it. But apart from that, that's generally how I planned it out. We can go. We'll go. So I got the first turn again on a roll off, and this is really the result. Pretty much got everything I wanted. The quick run through is that mostly on the right hand side, everything moved forward pretty as quickly as possible. The units that had magic missiles didn't march. The Carnosaur successfully had Shimmering Dragon cast on it, and that's why it's moved so far to the right. But I guess we can just break this down. Probably couldn't have gotten a better turn one, really. So, do you want to sort of describe, Paddy, what it felt like from your side of
Yeah.
the table?
The salt still stings. You can see those forests are empty now. Actually, there's 4 Deepwood Scouts that are fleeing the forest to the top. But basically, I lost 1.5 unit of Deepwood Scouts to javelins and fireballs, I believe. And I lost an eagle to either javelins and fireballs. And I lost 3 Glade Guard to javelins and fireballs. As the list building write-up that we did shows, your army has essentially 4 fireballs in it, which is really bad for Wood Elves because of toughness 3,
Yeah,
no
3
armor.
and I rolled the extra one, which was extraordinary, really.
Yeah,
I was expecting to
yeah.
just
So
use
3,
hammer
yeah,
hand.
exactly. 3 built in, and you rolled the 4th. And then, so basically, 2d6 strength 4 hits against Wood Elves is about 2d6 strength 4 wounds because you're basically rolling
Remarkably,
3
that's
up to
sort of what
12 dice.
happened. I mean, in
Mm,
hindsight, I guess the way to be interested in what you think, the skinks, in the end, I thought they were even better than the fireballs. The fireballs are great,
yeah,
there's no question, but the skinks just seem like, yeah, out of there's lots of things people will complain about at the moment, and Warhammer's a game where there's always relative power levels, but skinks just seem not only undercosted for what they do, but all of their abilities work really well together.
yeah. Well, I mean, you see what you might be able to zoom in a little bit if you can hit that little down the bottom right. There's a little plus symbol. Like we can because
Seems
that way
good,
we can
Paddy.
kind
Well,
of see.
thank you for bringing me into 2024
Yeah, and then you might be
or
able
like
to drag up or something
1994.
anyway. But yeah, but you can tell, like, so it's not just that they're cheap and they have javelins and poison and shields and skirmish and vanguard, and they round out to being what 5 points each. But it's they control an area, they pressure turn one.
There's something that, yeah, look, the next thing we'll talk about is the fireballs, but I think I just haven't, I don't even know if in the 3 games I've played so far that a skink unit has died. In this one, it gets down to 1 in the last turn, but for
Hmm,
55 points, and I had to cut 5 points off because I wanted to max out on characters in this list, but just you can see there's 2 units there. And they on the right hand side they knock off 2 Deepwood Scouts and then are able to pursue them like just the like 6 inch movement on top of that, and then they
yeah, six
stand and
inch
shoot
movement.
and knock out an eagle just full blown, bring one down,
Yeah,
charge.
which
Pretty
like
radical.
the Eagles are terrible matchups against poison because their
Sure, but
defense is
just
their
to kill
toughest
one
four and
outright.
weapon skill. But yeah, exactly. Rolling
I'm
six
expecting to
wounds
do
and
a
kill
wound
them.
and be happy.
Yeah, rolling three sixes. Sorry, yeah, on a stand and shoot after they've already marched and shot on turn one. Like it's
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
pretty impressive skill set.
It is.
But yeah, at this
And the
point,
fireballs was sort
it
of the thing that added up here as well. So I did
yeah
pretty well so I had Ruby Ring on the Temple Guard champion because I couldn't fit it anywhere else. And I had the double burning alignments and the fireball from the skink. Rolling double sixes on the burning alignment into the Deepwood Scouts was not going to get dispelled with
yeah
anyway. I think we played it as irresistible force, but at 15, even the Oaken Staff, you would have had to roll double sixes really to pull it off.
yeah
And yeah, it just seem pretty good. Like, what can you do? Those little guys,
yeah.
like that
I
one,
mean,
I just rolled eight dice and 8 wounds from 8, which was
yeah. I
extraordinary.
guess what you can do is deploy better. Obviously, like I gave you that opportunity, I didn't have to, and that backfired massively. It's pretty hard to get out of the range of two 24-inch fireballs, though, to be fair. Like,
Mm.
even evasive, you can use it, but you fall back directly away from the unit. So then you have to remain in cover. If you can see one unit around that forest, so if I fall back out of where they were from that forest directly away, if you can see one model, you can still fire it at all 8, which is the power of fireball, I suppose. But yeah, I guess that's how you don't get hit by an 8 wound fireball turn one is you deploy out of range, which I'll be a lot more thoughtful of.
Yeah, I think the range is the big deal. Like, there are lots of magic missiles, but the ranges, again, in the article, because it's too analytical to go in here, but the difference between 15 and 24 inches isn't 9 inches. It's sort of 2 turns. And they're 2 turns where when you're throwing off a fireball on the first turn, you're just not, there's no comeback to it. Whereas when you're trying to
Yeah,
wade in and cast a 12-inch, 15-inch spell that's, even if it's got a lot of power, it's not just that you've lost that first turn with utility, but you're more vulnerable. You suddenly end up in combat and can't use it. This the nature of fireball and fireball type ranges is a big factor for me. And like I have particular opinions about burning alignment after this game, but there's no doubt that the 2d6 strength 4 hits is pretty wild if you can get it at range. Like, and I guess the theme of the comeback is automatic hits. So that just
yeah,
cuts in half anything else. I did find the skinks more reliable long term, but they're automatically hitting on sixes. or automatically wounding on 6s. So it's just those things cut so many of your probabilities right down. So do you think turn one, how big of an advantage is it to be able to go first?
Huge, basically. I think it's a massive advantage, and like for most armies, I know most people say like, if you're a ranged army, you want to go first. But I think if you're a close combat army, you want to go first because you have to get up the board quicker. You get them in combat one round earlier. It sets the pace. It gets you like the first strike opportunity, which I think is huge. In your first turn, you basically clear half a board of my guys. As I said, deployment didn't help, but it gave you the opportunity to do it. My bad deployment is softened if I get to go first, because I at least get to fire my 20 shots that I brought and move my guys into better positions, like to dispel. I don't know. I think it's a huge advantage.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if we play more because the game we played where you beat me with Empire, I did think after that, oh, I wish I'd gone second. And there are some things about ranges that if you're going second, I think in that case you talk about the Hellblaster, it's just, well, I'll just set up an inch back. At the time, I didn't,
Yeah,
there's cannons and things you got to worry about too, but it will be interesting to know. In this instance, and I guess we'll talk about it next, the Carnosaur. But there's some tricks you can do with ranges, but is it just always better to have the initiative? I don't know. After this game, it was hard to argue. It was pretty brutal. It was probably one of the most brutal first turns I've seen. And it was,
yeah.
I think nearly everything had some effect, even if it didn't work. So I lost a few skinks at the top. So we sort of had them turn by turn. And I don't remember a lot happening on your turn. Was mostly the Wood Elf charged and got shot and there was some movement. So if you want to talk through what you did, and then I can sort of explain how we've ended up at this position with a missing tree man, etc.
Yeah. So I'm still figuring out how to play, particularly the trees in this army. And against this matchup, I was at a bit of a loss. So after I'd lost not half my army, but a chunk of my army on turn one, the salt was burning, and I just wanted to do something. And I probably should have tried. What I'm still trying to learn is to kind of, as you say, something always dies. Um, but I was just fuming. So I charged my tree men into a Carnosaur, which probably wasn't the smartest thing. I think I did that anyway. Or did you charge into
No,
my
I
You charged
definitely
into
did
my
it.
tree men.
Charge the
Yeah, because
Carnosaur. The treatment came up. I don't think it could have dodged a charge. So what I was able to do with the dragon, Shimmering Dragon, was put the Carnosaur in a position where the treatment couldn't charge it, but the dragon could. But if the dragon had charged it, it would
yeah,
have got into the flank, and I would have just fled. And that would have left. I
yeah.
guess it's important to know because there's all this supporting material we've got for this battle, but that I had set up with the Ghostlan character. So where you can see the Slan Mage here, if the dragon had charged the Carnosaur, I would have just ran. The dragon would have ended up in the charge range of the Slan.
I don't believe the dragon could have charged that turn, right? You had already gotten Miasmic Mirage off, hadn't you?
You had
But
a turn in between. So this is at the end of
yeah.
my
Oh, this is
second
the end of
turn.
your
You
yeah.
definitely
So
could have
you
charged the dragon only into the Carnosaur, into the
yeah,
flank.
right, okay. Yeah, and that your point about the Slan being there is why I didn't, because
Yeah.
I thought your Slan geared up as a dragon slaying piece. I knew that if I had to charge something, I had to win in one combat, basically, or get out of the range of the Slan. You would set it up so that if you fled, I would have been intercepted. I would have had to continue to charge, be intercepted by his Slan, and then run the risk of dying with your dragon slaying sword. Um, so the treeman, like as I had already lost that top flank, I kind of just wanted to see my guys in combat, to be honest, at this point. So the treeman I left there and thought obviously the Carnosaur was going to charge him, but I wanted to see what Strangle Roots did. I wanted to see if it could hold up against the
It did a
Carnosaur.
wound.
And
Did a wound.
it did a wound with Strangle Roots, and your dude on top whiffed. The killing blow was I didn't realize Carnosaurs had D3 multiple wounds, which may have changed my alignment. I may would have, tried to avoid that combat because that's obviously bad against a tree man who would be wounded on threes with no armor saves after the Carnosaur's -3. But either way, I wanted to see how it fared against monsters. And look, the guy on the top left, the Carnosaur managed to roll 4 hits, I think, 4+, I think. It would have been forced
Yeah,
to
it
hit.
was big. Like the guy definitely missed all of them. The Carnosaur got through like 3 wounds, whether it was 4 hits and 3 wounds or 3 hits
Yeah.
and 3 wounds, and then no armor save from the -3 AP, and all the regens
Mm,
didn't work.
yeah.
And yeah, this was probably
Missing
the high
five
point of
regions.
heal. It just
Yeah. I
went bang,
mean,
bang, bang, like 6 wounds and without stomps. And
yeah.
look, that was one of the combats I wanted. Only if I could charge. I think if your guy had the initiative, it started to tilt against me because it was just like to fit it into the list, it had to be a literally naked Carnosaur. I couldn't even afford a great weapon or a shield. So
Yeah.
there were problems if it stuck around. But I sort of thought in that turn about charging the Treekin because it would have been easy, but in the past, I've been too passive. The Carnosaur is a great model. I knew multiple wounds was going to hurt if I got anything through, and I still had the stomps up my sleeve, which
Mm,
again, automatic hits, they're just huge. Like the redundancy of having that in the back um, is just crazy. Like really, that you can put this guy on the top with all these magic weapons, but it's the ridden mount that really provides the consistency.
yeah. The stomps and impact hits across the board, I think, are proving to be key just in guaranteed reliable damage dealing. Because as you
Yeah.
see, going top with 4 hits, um, and even though you didn't need your stomps, like the strength 7 auto hits is
Yeah,
just
straight seven.
it's crazy. Like, um, which I guess leans to the power of dragons, obviously, who have 6 stomps. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I look, the tree man, rest in peace. He'll be back with the next battle. I definitely still think it's good, and he almost survived against a charging Carnosaur. If he held one turn up, then it
That would have
it
been good.
looks a bit different for me. Yeah. Um, but yeah, as you can see there, there's not a whole lot left. I have the bottom side remaining, and those dryads. Look, again, the dryads are tied up against the troglodyte there. Again, I wanted to just see what they did. Most of this army, I just wanted to see how they work. I was actually impressed by the dryads, to be honest.
Yeah.
Weapon skill 4, toughness 4, and stubborn. One regret I have is not putting a nymph in there, who's the champion, because then you can issue a challenge, tie up something definitely for 1 turn, fall back in good order, and
Hmm.
just bonk something down. That was seven models that ended up in 3 rounds of combat, maybe died on the third round against a drug, which is 200 points
Yeah,
compared to 90
it went
points.
for a while. I mean, I was
Yeah.
confident, like on that side of the board, obviously, that something would get them. And the Trog is a bit of a meme. Failed the
Mm,
Primeval Roar on the way in, unfortunately. But it did, like, the Trog was winning, but couldn't break them. It wasn't winning by a lot. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of
no.
attack, but they do hold up. Like, I like them, Dryads. I think they are good toughness 4 to have something different to run around with, and because you can run them in such small units. And I guess it's
Yeah,
worth
yeah, I
pointing
think
out.
definitely. You go. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that the like to look at just the turn that what we'll get to next is Miasmic Mirage went off
Mm,
on this turn straight away, and so the dragons there
yeah,
sort of stuck for the moment, which helped. So like on the right hand side of the board, most things are dead. The dryads are hanging on, but they're not going to hang on forever. And then on the right hand side, those treekin have moved up. The treeman has been dealt with on the charge, and the dragon's sort of stuck in no man's land at the
yeah.
moment.
I mean, again, like the Miasmic Mirage effect was huge. That spell is touted as being really good, and it definitely is. It's a high cast point, and it feels like it should be. Because
Yeah,
that
well,
if you
I'll bring up
well
the next
if
shot
you
while I
don't,
talk about that because
yeah,
it doesn't have a lot to do with that shot, but it's the segue really that sort of moves between the
mm,
two bridges of the game because you sort of I dominate the first turn with missiles. I get the charge off that I want and get the kill while the dragon's done. And that Miasmic Mirage I got off on turns 2, 3, and 4. So, and I
yeah,
agree with you. I think to me, like the dispel bubble thing was huge. Like I think we probably have different perceptions about the dispelling because early on everything just went off for me. But once that Wood Elf, the sorceress, got in the bubble, I did get Miasmic Mirage
Mm,
off, but everything else was just sort of like the advantage of having
yeah,
a level 4 on level 4. It's just a coin toss, and the staff gives you like a tiny edge, like 55-45, but you just think,
I
oh,
think
what if I can't get it off?
the Oaken Stave definitely proved itself. It was annoying that the one spell you got off on that turn was Miasmic Mirage. I think I remember dispelling four of your five spells, but the one that got off was Miasmic Mirage.
Yeah,
Because that was the one I needed. It was my only win condition from this point on, and it probably was from the start, was my dragon tearing through stuff. And from turn two onwards, it wasn't allowed to until turn five.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't think that like that is just the luck of the dice. Sorry, Oaken Stave definitely did its job. Its job though was to dispel that spell in particular, and it didn't. Unfortunately,
I don't know if high
I don't
spell
know.
costs matter. Like it's really interesting because I think what makes the game great is the complexity. And there's a difference between there's some built-in complexity and the rules are poorly written. There's no question in some parts because it's just there's a lot going on in the game and there could be
Mm,
some easy streamlining. But also that's the layers upon layers of abilities that make it like you're always encountering novel situations. But I think what emerges with the skill is there's mini games within the game. So there's the deployment
yeah,
game. There's this sort of like range game, which I think most people who you hear from who sound skillful at the game sort of understand the ranges. But I
yeah,
think this bubble thing is a huge deal. I think Magic's easy to talk about in theory, but it's really in practice having a very like wildly different effect game to game, and it's wildly different depending on what caster you choose and what school of magic. What are they called now? Like whatever they're called, the streams of
laws of
magic or
magic,
something. Yeah, like they change
laws.
everything, and
Yeah,
then on top of that, just this bubble, like the staff, stave just creates this super dispeller, but I had Arcane Vassal, and Miasmic Mirage
yeah.
just cost so much to get off. Like even the plus ones, I wasn't too impressed by, but like it all helps. And if you get something off on like a 16, it's just going off, you know. So
Yeah, I think after every game we've had this talking point where the power of magic doesn't feel like it's in the spells, feels like it's in the
hmm,
dispels. It's whoever
yeah,
wins the dispel game, and I know that makes it sound like, well, yeah, because the other person got all their magic off, but the magic just kind of shifts things a little bit. Spells like Miasmic Mirage shifted this game a lot, but I don't think there's a lot of spells that are like that. I think all of them, all laws have like a really good spell, an okay spell, and then probably some crap spells. But
yeah.
if you win the dispel battle, then you just get those turn by turn boosts. But no game I've played so far has been determined by a spell, except for this one, and even then it didn't determine it fully
Hmm.
because I stuffed up deployment and got wiped in the first two turns. But that was just a cherry on top kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I think that that's right. Like you sort of the thing you can control is the dispel bubble in a way, like from the outset. And you can put this guy down who's going to give you pretty much a 50-50 on everything. So for my sake, like I had two powerhouse spells in terms of Miasmic Mirage, like on a dragon, and I've got level 4 with +1 to cast it. And on top of that, I've got the Spectral Doppelganger Dragon Slayer Sword sitting there too. But the problem is, like, even though I can give myself a bit of an edge, like, there's still a good chance that you'll dispel it. Like, so there's
Yeah.
more to this, like, later to talk about, I suppose, with deterrence, because I think that's one of the bigger things too in gaming the system or how to win. But it's also like I just think the answer to magic is less talk about magic and more direct action against the dispeller. Like I mean I know there are lists out there with like multiple level 4s, but I think probably trying to get outside the bubble, like Arcane Vassal was a big help in that respect. But also just attacking the wizard outright and maybe like hurling something at it. Yeah, I think there's a
Mm.
lot to do with turn order and things like even Miasmic Mirage being a hex or an enchantment or whatever it is, or spent at that phase of the game is really crappy in the sense that you can't move him out of the range before you do it. So you can move the Dispeller in just to have a crack at that. And like it can be so powerful on turn 2 and not that powerful on turn 5 or something like that. And I don't mean that
Mm.
spell specifically, but just the magic swings are huge, but I just don't. They're sort of being talked about in this really measured way, and I think it's more like, nah, it's good in the sense that big things can happen. You got to be prepared for it, and you got to have a plan. And when they go off, sometimes there's just fireworks. Like in this game, certainly in the first three, like while Miasmic Mirage was going off and the fireballs were going off, it was just easy street for me.
Yeah. Like, yeah, if you take Miasmic Mirage out of turn 2 and 3,
Ah,
my dragon it probably kills the ancient stag with the skink on it in 2 turns. It probably
yeah,
kills something
absolutely.
else.
Like I came
Like,
in with all of the anti-dragon tech, and I came away
yeah,
thinking this and poison were the best.
yeah,
So,
yeah, poison.
right. Funnily enough, I think poison is the best, but I think Miasmic
Definitely,
Mirage is
yeah.
great. Like even though your guy can still sort of fly 6 inches and move, I just think, look, even if there wasn't a dragon, you'd still find a good target for Miasmic Mirage. Like just stopping a unit from charging or even marching in this format, like
Yeah,
it's good. This is the
the
next term where things sort of become
BSB,
more
like,
fun, at least for you. Um, and I played
yeah,
really poorly, I think, at this point. Like it was too hard when you started tilting the tree man. It was great times for me. And everything's going well. And then what happens is like sort of I know that Troglodon's going to win, and I'm like, let's go kill everything else. And I think this was a huge mistake. And it seems cagey, and I guess at the time you're like, oh well, it's the first time we play this army, and I've massacred one side. But honestly, I don't think this would have gone any other way in some ways as well. I knew from before the game that I had limited options of taking the dragon on or like killing it, really. And what happens next is really interesting because I've sort of you can see the Carnosaur in the Stegodons behind is probably a great metaphor for like what's going on here. And I've just got jumbled up trying to get back. I've got a Stegodon behind the Temple Guard who's seeing nothing, can shoot over, but he's also that means he can be charged by the dragon. And luckily for me, I get Miasmic Mirage off again. And we're sort of going into your turn where you can see the lurking battle standard bearer who's just going to start to take action in your when you get to declare charges.
yeah. So at this stage, all I had left was Glade Riders, my BSB Stag guy, my dragon, and the Dryads were about to get. I think they just got wiped or they're just about to. But what I've learned from this point is that that was enough technically to win the game.
Yeah.
with we see how close the points ended up being after getting wiped. Um, but just a shout out to this great Stag guy, Glade Captain on Great Stag, BSB, Wall Banner,
He
great
didn't give
weapon,
up.
Helm of the Hunt build. He's incredible just because of the -1 to hit in the challenge, despite a high weapon
Hmm.
skill already, 2 up on the save
How many
somehow.
points?
I think it's about 240, 250, which is the ideal range for your secondary heroes, I think. Um, Basically, I was sick of doing nothing with him, so I just charged him into flank of those temple guards. Again, I forgot slash didn't know. I can't remember if I knew that they challenge anything,
Hmm.
like issue challenges and accept them. But I wanted to see what this guy did in combat as well, and I was impressed. I think I challenged. He challenged. He ended up doing 3 or 4 wounds, I think. Because
Yeah.
the stag has a hit at strength 5, a stomp at strength 5, weapon skill 4 as well, and strength 5. So he's not a terrible mount for $50, 50 points. And the guy on top hits well enough with weapon skill 7, and a great weapon with always strikes first allows him to usually strike first despite them cancelling each other out. So I think combat is included, which he comes with 2 built in, with a standard war banner and ideally charge in the flank, making it 3 static combat res. Like that's enough to hold off a unit of infantry or something else that is you need to like both a hammer and an anvil. I think he's a great utility piece, and if you can
Yeah, I
find
think that's the point that is, I hope, sort of sticks around, like these mid-tier things that can, at the moment, there's all the talk of the dragons, and we'll get to that at the end. But like these things in the middle, they make the game fun, and this was a fun combat because it's
Yeah,
sort of seesawed, and they were both those middle ground units. And the Temple Guard, sort of whatever, but they die in every game and they do something in every game, and they're sort of echoes of these used to be these infantry clashes and guys on cavalry and not like just ridden monsters and other like small units that seem to be dominating the more competitive metagame. But I think this like combat res is the answer in that like you don't have as many big blocks, but you sort of want one or you want something that just does combat res. It sort of deals with things like that demon prince running around that
yeah,
dies.
exactly.
Yeah, it's great. Like nothing else kills that sort of thing. And I think there's an argument that you can sort of even take on some of these ridden monsters if you can just hang on with +3 or +4 for a bit and someone else turns up and adds a few more +2 in the side or the back. So
Yeah, so how much combat res is built into your Temple Guard unit? They have
Lad
banner,
I
war
had
banner,
Warbanner as well. So I sort of see Ruby Ring and Warbanner as the automatics until I've got better options. And then I had, yeah, at the +2, the standard, the Warbanner,
two
so
ranks,
4 in close
and
order.
two ranks, right? Close
Yeah, two
order. So you
ranks.
had a
The
built-in
full
five,
bow.
is that correct?
What was that?
Do you have a built-in five combat res, static
Yeah,
combat res with that
close
unit?
order,
Yeah.
two ranks, BSB, standard and Warbanner.
So the Great Stag, I think, won the first round of combat by one. So one dude, brings six combat res on a charge. Like
Yeah.
that's, I think, very, very handy for a 250 point model. Um, so, and as you see later in the game, probably, I'm not sure if we get to it later. I think we do, but that Temple Guard gets wiped eventually, and something can
Yeah,
join the
that's
fray,
right.
which which is the point. Of what I'm going to try and do with this Stag is either hold something up or finish something off with his built-in combat res with a flank charge. But it's a great piece. Very happy with it.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's an ornament. It's flavorful. It gives you a point of difference, like to do something different. I certainly overlooked, and this was another mistake, the sort of 360 charge range here. I thought I felt like I was safer than I was, but interesting, there was some technical stuff too with that. There was that impassable terrain there that
Mm,
created issues, and I could have been like gamey with if I hadn't accepted a challenge. I thought I needed to accept a challenge to keep the bulk of the unit there, but if I'd let six of them die, I could have opened up those back four guys. And this is something I'm
yeah,
interested in if anyone's out there listening. But in the past, the way you remove casualties has always changed, but I feel like and we've had a couple of thorny questions about this, that the choice to remove casualties in order from the back, but from left to right, is creating some weird openings where that Stegodon probably could have rammed into a line of sight on the stag. And then it's sort
yeah,
of there's some very funny rules about how you slide around impassable terrain or how you close the door and all this sort of stuff where and even with drilled and not in charges where people seem to be moving extreme amounts of distances, but at some level too the game has always favored getting into combat. The rules seem to push that way, so I'd be interested to know. I thought you did well with that, like the stag was shielded by the forest, then was shielded by
yeah.
the impassable terrain, and later on I think runs around and hides in it at the end when it's sort of like there's nothing more that could be done really.
Mm.
We'll go to the next because this is where it starts again. Because I probably should have just run away. And then from this one, you can see the Carnosaur's missing. So that's where,
the power, the power of poison and fireballs comes
yeah,
back.
that's right. Turned against me and riding around thinking like I can just Venom of the Firefly frog everybody to death. And I just thought, oh, what'll happen is I just got used to your guy being my Esmic Mirage the whole time. The Temple
Mm.
Guard will stand there and I'll just trot something into the side and finish them off. But really, like the Carnosaur gets dropped by I believe it was Ruby Ring, but it had taken sort of chip damage, one from Strangle Roots,
Uh,
one from something else, one
Yeah,
from poison.
I think I had four left when I shot it
Yeah, I
down,
feel like
and
it
it
had
and
four. One went to an arrow, and then the fireball went pretty high, and enough sixes were
yeah,
rolled, and I had a really weak save on it, and it just dropped. And so that was
yeah,
260 points. and starting to like open the door. But I think it's really important to think about like the game is so different in turn four than it is in turn one. Like, it's really different, and we're sort of struggling to keep the games at a meaningful length. We've all got families and driving to play these games, but you really do get like it sharpens up. Like the end game is whippy, and there's not a lot going on. There's a lot of units that don't do anything. There's a lot of units that just smash things and can run around.
Yeah.
And yeah, I made just massive errors in. I was riding high and then I just should have backed off. I knew I didn't have the numbers. I did think carefully for a long time about a Stegadon charge into the dragon, and I'm glad I didn't do it. And it seems like wimping out, but it's just like the numbers just don't add up. Like I would have got creamed, and then you would have
Yeah.
overrun and gone on to the next thing. Yeah, we'll do the last shot because that was where it's sort of like, oh, I was like, ugh, is this going to be over soon? I'm in
Mm.
trouble because the Miasmic Mirage didn't work. And the dragon had cleaned up the temple guard. But as you say, there was probably one more chance to do something, which I think is an interesting sort of skill, I guess, in the game.
Yeah. I think so. As I said, like the Stag and the dragon wipe the temple. They don't wipe them, but they have to pursue them, the temple guard. And I pursued with both stupidly. For some reason, I just thought like I could have taken the time and thought about it and test a restraint with my dragon. That was the end of turn five, I believe. So there was one turn left.
Yeah.
I had to chase with something. I knew that like the stag was gonna get the bow and the flea. So I should have turned him around and just had one last Hail Mary. I don't know why I didn't, to be honest. I think halfway through this game I wanted it to end. And then not realizing just because of inexperience is like how tight it is. 500 points. The stag is 250, and the wizard is 250. So that's 1,000 points on the table basically. I hadn't won yet, so I should have done that math in my head and turned around. But I also definitely wanted to catch the Tomb Guard because in this game, if you don't wipe them out, getting 25% of something, which happens with the Glade Rise, there's one guy left and you only get 30 points for them.
It's probably a good point.
135
Like
points.
I did the roll first, and there was that one of those moments where you're just like, oh, maybe I wasn't going to pursue. And I do think it's something about savoring the game a bit more that like I like to sort of, you're just going to get dramatic rolls. And I felt like I've had my share of good ones recently, but you sort of want some of the high moments to roll on a D6. And if you're just trying to roll 3 plus, it's still, one time out of three, you're going to create improbable memory. And I think that's sort of
Mm,
the bits that, yeah, you don't want to rush through it. You spend all this time painting these damn things and like setting up the board and driving to the game. And you do sort of owe it, I think, to go, I better slow it down. Like, and everyone's under time pressure because it's just at the moment it's taking us 4 hours. This was 4 hours, which was great for us to play it out.
yeah.
And it was just one of those ones where I like rolled it. Um, and I think, yeah, in hindsight, it was a difficult decision because, yeah, if I had rolled high and your wild, the BSB hadn't caught them, it wouldn't have been great, like I would have probably
Yeah.
rallied and I probably would have saved 300 points. So it's hard to say, but yeah, I think knowing from the Carnosaur getting Frenzy, just the ability to reform and turn around
Mm,
essentially is massive with these big units because the threat. And I'm played in a lot of older editions where you would just run off the board and that would be the end, but you tended to smash your big units into their big units. And now you sort of want to clean up and turn around, do it again. And it's particularly that last game I played against Mike where the demon just went over and over. It's terrifying, like how many combats they can get into. So
yeah.
what do you think, Paddy? Like,
Uh,
so I guess turn order could come back maybe turn six. Having the last turn would help in that regard, but we've got to make it to more turn sixes. But the final thing I guess we sort of had on the slate today was just the dragon. Like, what's their place in the game?
I mean, I know it's tough to stomach coming up against the dragon, and to be honest, in our circle, I'll probably not ask, but at least tell people I'm bringing a dragon because I think it's
Mm.
like as soon as it could charge, it wiped a unit. Like I know it was
Yeah,
supported by the Great Stag,
it was
but
brutal.
its impact was felt. Miasmic Mirage probably ended up winning you the game because that guy
Probably.
couldn't charge for three turns. I think the hype around them is justified. They're expensive, so if you can kill them or at least deter them, like you did with building into the Slan, then that's at least some form of mitigation. I was definitely concerned about it. But there's methods, I suppose. It's easy saying it from a guy with a dragon, but I'm not someone who loves playing with dragons. I just had it. So, and I don't have a lot of wood elves still. So I brought it this time. But in our circle, I'll be telling people when I'm bringing it because I think it's a huge advantage.
Yeah, it's funny because there's got to be something that's the biggest, but I don't know. I don't think the dragon itself is the problem. I think it just might be too easy to bring something at 500 points at the moment, and that the gap between 100 point units, 300 point units, and 500 point units is just the 500 point units are so much better than the 300 point units. And the 300
Yeah.
point units are so much better than 100, but they just caught in the middle that you win the games by the 500 point unit smashing the 300 point unit, and the 100 point units don't seem to be consequential. But it's funny, like, just I don't know. I thought poison was the most effective thing against it, funnily enough, in the end. Like, you really can start to bring it down if you can have a couple of turns where you're just throwing things at it. And just with the tree man, I do think the wounds are the problem. Like with the dragon, the difference between dragons and other things are the 6 wounds plus the save. So because you have so many base wounds to start with, the probabilities are
Mm.
so high with the Talisman of Protection that you're just going to get something off. Whereas you put it on a regular like captain type guy, you're expecting to get +1 wound, whereas you're expecting 3 more wounds at toughness 6 with some armor. But yeah, it's just they're out there. Like I think it is. It's just a way of like being polite about it. Like I wanted to play against the dragon. Obviously, I had all of it, but I would prefer also not to have to take the boat load of abilities. But I think you have to. Like if I play a tournament, I'm taking dragon like 200 points of anti-dragon stuff because the lizardmen just can't bring their own one, even though they've got the next best thing really on the ground in the Carnosaur.
Can lizardmen take elementalism?
Uh, yeah, I think so. Yeah, they have a couple
Because
of the priests can, but is there a spell there that
because
deals?
well, Plague of Rust is the armor depleter. So because at the end here you fired like 20 to
Yeah,
30 comes at me, and a good like 12 went in, maybe 8 went in, and I made 6 saves, I think.
yeah, there are a lot of
But
saves.
I think I still took 2 wounds from it, and I think just but if you have Plague of Rust on it, which you can cast into combat as well, which is a bonus. But if you take that 2 points of armor off it, those 8 javelins probably turn into 4 wounds instead of. So um, yeah, I think this, as you said, poison is remarkably good.
Just automatic
It's
hits, I think, and
yeah.
poison is on things that don't are small, I suppose. Like it's
Mm.
skinks being the smallest, or maybe swarms, which you have to bring out again at one point. But I do think, yeah, you got to get the dragon to stay still, and that's what I needed the Miasmic Mirage sort of to do. Otherwise, like it
Yeah.
just would fly over, kill something, turn around, fly in an opposite direction. But I didn't mind it really. Like I didn't have problems with them, but I do agree. Like you sort of want to know, are you playing a dragon game or not? Because the difference is so large, and so many people have these wonderfully painted mid-tier pieces. Like I want to see more BSBs, Temple Guard type fights. They're
Yeah.
the sorts of things
I
that
think
are
everyone
interesting.
does. I think most
So
people do. And like if you're
yeah,
not geared into the dragon, then it's too hard. It's just and it's probably not enjoyable.
yeah, it's just
Because
very undramatic. Like you can sort of
yeah.
you're missing that sort of everything is am I going to get this dragon or not? And so then the dragon player feels bad because you've been ground bound the whole time, or I'm just getting minced by a unit at a time. And I'm interested, like I'm definitely aware of how to do charge redirection or chaff, but I just don't know how you can make that consistent because you feed that if you're charging something on your turn, they're just going to wipe it, overrun, and then charge something else. And that's what I find the turn order thing really interesting, like the double attacks. It does matter a lot how you set up combat, knowing what's going to happen on the next turn. If you lose a key combat on a turn that you initiated it, if it's something like a dragon, it just rips through you. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah,
It was interesting. Like for a game that seemed to have so little promise, it certainly yielded a lot of interesting scenarios and probably like solidified a lot of
definitely.
my ideas about how to play Lizardmen competitively anyway.
Yeah, I think your list was pretty
Yeah, pretty
maximized.
optimized.
Yeah, yeah. I know you
Troglodyte
don't like.
withstanding.
Yeah, Troglodon probably is the omission, but just whack up a skeleton in there or 20, 40 more skins. You're good.
Yeah,
But
no.
yeah, I still have like I took a lot out of the Wood Elves side of it, and there's still plenty. I didn't get to use half of my army, and the half that I did, I liked.
Hmm.
So I think I still think Wood Elves are quite strong. So they've got enough poison and
Yeah, yeah.
skirmishes to do it.
I think it's good. Look, we've got a lot more information in text form, and we might even like do some add-ons or quicker takeaways, because especially about our own lists, which might not have come through here so much. So we'll cut it there, and then we'll add other information, particularly in the aftermath or in other formats, to just sort of round out where we're going to go next with a lot of this stuff. Thanks,
Yeah.
Paddy.
Thanks, Phil.